I'm George Camo. I was born here in Canton and I grew up here. I still live here. And I got involved in local history at a pretty young age and gravitated to the Historical Society as a result of just meeting people who I was really curious about and learning more about my town. At the time, when I was in high school, I was failing U.S. history, and my professor said, look, you're going to fail unless you do something that you're interested in. And I was really interested in local history. I was in particular the Canton Viaduct. So I wrote a term paper on that, and that's how I passed high school history. And ever since, I've just been incredibly invested and spent most of my life helping to protect and preserve historic sites here in Canton. The Historical Society was founded in 1871, so we're a really old organization. And at that time, a group of men got together and they decided they were going to collect local history and papers and ephemera and photographs and anything that had to do with Canton. They collected a lot of objects as well, and as their collection grew, they needed a building. So in the early 1900s, one of those men donated a piece of land here on Washington Street in Canton, and they built this building. And this has housed our collection ever since. And so for more than 100 years, this has been what I call Canton's attic. So it's full of all sorts of just amazing artifacts, stories and books and papers. And today the collection is pretty large, actually, and well preserved and well kept. And that's what the society does. And even today, we do a tremendous amount of local preservation work. So we are preserving the David Tilden House on Pleasant Street. Anything to do with the history, the people, places, and things of Canton, that's what we're about. So I think that we assumed that the native population was here just a couple hundred years ago, but actually they were here thousands of years ago. We have a historic record of artifacts here in this building, but also within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that dates back 7 to 12,000 years. So we know that prehistoric man was here in the Neponset River Valley, making tools, hunting, living, and sustaining their population, in particular the Massachusetts tribe. And that Massachusetts tribe was located in Dorchester and would spend their winters inland here in the Blue Hills area of what is now Canton. But it's really important to note that the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapog still exists today. And they're still active individuals who are part of that tribe and that history. In the early 1600s, as the town started to develop, we were part of Dorchester. So it was the land that was beyond the Blue Hills. And that land went all the way down to Fall River. It was a large tract of land. And there were several divisions of that land. And within those divisions, in Dorchester, became a division in the early 1700s called Stoughton. And that's primarily what Canton is today, was that early division. So in 1797, we divorced, and we kept our piece of property where First Parish Church is here in Canton, and the parish in Stoughton started to be formed and to grow up. And so we consider Stoughton, which is celebrating its 300th birthday this year, also our birthday as well. Everybody knows Paul Revere as the Patriot. Paul Revere, who was part of the U.S., the American Revolution. Paul Revere, who did the Midnight Ride. Paul Revere, the silversmith. And so there's this really amazing history about Paul Revere. And then Canton plays a really important role. During the American Revolution, Paul Revere came to what was then Stoughton to look for a site to build a powder mill. And that was to support the Continental Army that was fighting Great Britain. And so Revere was really familiar with this particular area and the waterways and the industrial uses that are in this space. In 1801, Paul Revere is 65 years old, and he decides that he is going to start a whole new industry. He's not done yet with his life. He decides he really can solve a major problem that's facing this fledgling country, and that is that he can roll copper sheets for use to build a navy, essentially. And when he starts looking around for a property to buy to build this industry, he looks at Canton. At that point, we're Canton, and he buys the same property that he had surveyed earlier for the gunpowder mill. And he moves to the banks of the Neponset River, the Canton River, here in Canton, and he starts an industry. He starts the U.S. American copper industry, and ultimately, that is the factory that's responsible for rolling the copper that is on the roof of the New York State House, the Massachusetts State House. Robert Fulton wrote to him so that they could get copper for the first steam engines and steamships. The company has a storied history that dates right through the U.S. Civil War. And the cannons that were cast here, the bells that Revere cast were cast here in Canton, and the history and the site still lives on today. Today, it's the Museum of Discovery and Innovation, and that's a project that I was really proud to sort of get off the boards. And there is now a multi-million-dollar museum, a tourist attraction, a restaurant, and exhibit space on 9 acres of land that was once owned by Paul Revere.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Yeah. It's really amazing. I mean, Paul Revere's impact on this town cannot be overstated. He was a real citizen who took place in the everyday lives of people. We have a document in the vault, which I call a GoFundMe, where he basically creates a subscription because one of his friends' houses had burned to the ground. And he starts a subscription service and says, look, this guy who was in the American Revolution with me, his house has burned. We need to help him. Will you step up? And when you look at that list, his is the first name on that list. Boston Providence Railroad had a number of routes picked out, and they had rejected Canton as a route. Unfortunately, one of their largest benefactors who had signed on to buy stock in the corporation was Joseph Warren Revere, Paul Revere's son. And he said, I will pledge money to your corporation and be a director on your board if the railroad comes through Canton. And so they have to build the Canton Viaduct, which is basically a long, continuous, multiple arch stone bridge. It's built in 1834, and the Canton Viaduct is an engineering marvel. It is 615 feet long, 70 feet tall, on a 1-degree turn, and it basically carries travel, even today, from Boston to New York. Amtrak runs over it, the commuter rail runs over it, and it's this marvelous piece of stone architecture that was designed again, in 1834 for a single train, and today trains that weigh many more tons just roll over it, and it's an incredibly historic structure. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, and it is an amazing landmark within our town. It's a good question to ask about hopes. I think that we are here in these moments of time, and our goal is just to make our place, our space, our lives better. And I hope that that continues, that people who come here appreciate the town, make it better, and leave it better than they found it. Paul Revere Heritage Site, that was a toxic waste dump. Today, it's a park with, children and events and, dogs and families and just people coming to a space that is made better. The preservation of the Tilden House. It's 300 years old, and today we've made it better. When I found that years ago, it was standing sawdust, and today it is going to become a destination for events and programs. And you sort of look around and hope that you're raising the awareness of all these amazing sites so that in the future, people come to appreciate them and save them and preserve them. Preservation doesn't happen by accident. It is connected to a use. And so my goal for most of my life has been to find uses for the things that we want to save. And the things that aren't worth saving, you have to decide that at a certain point and say, okay, I'm not gonna save that, but I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna move that forward. So my hope is that there'll be more people to come forward to do it, because it isn't done by any one person, but we all do it together. So I'm pretty hopeful. I think the town's doing really great, and I get the chance to look at the town over 300 years and sort of see the trajectory. Um, our location is so phenomenal that I think it'll just continue to be a great town.